Present perfect tense. When are we going to use the present perfect tense? Well, for me, I normally tell my students, okay, that we're going to use the present perfect tense when we're talking about a completed action in the past without specifying, okay, a time. So without a specific time. And I've found over the years that it's easier this way. And this is how I teach it. In the textbooks, in other English courses, or from other English teachers, they will tell you that the present perfect tense is something that started in the past, but could continue into the present or things like that. I don't want to go into all that confusion, okay? I want you to understand that the present perfect tense functions like the past tense. The only difference is that we don't have a specific time. If you learn it that way, it's easier to identify when to use it correctly. Okay? So since we have that clear, let's move on to the structure. What's the structure of the present perfect tense? First, we have to use the auxiliary verb have. In this case, have is not like the verb, okay? It's an auxiliary verb, okay? We use it with other verbs to create this perfect tense. So have, we have to conjugate the verb to have in the present tense. So I have, you have, we have, they have. For he, she, it, we have to use has. So since we have the first part, okay, now let's move on to the second part of this tense. We need the past participle of the main verb. What does this mean? For the regular verbs, they normally end in ed. They function similar to the past tense, okay? So let's say we're talking about the verb to cook. In the past participle, that would be cooked with ed at the end. If we were talking about the irregular verbs, then I normally tell my students to check the list, okay? The more we use the irregular verbs, the more we become accustomed, okay, to the conjugation in the past participle, okay? However, if at the beginning you don't know, just check the list that I always provide. So check the list of all the irregular verbs in English. But let's say we had the verb to see. To see is an irregular verb, okay? In the past participle, to see becomes seen. So I can say, I have, the auxiliary verb to have, I have seen, you have seen, we have seen, they have seen. Then we have has. So he, she, it has seen. And that's how we create the present perfect tense. Okay? Awesome. Now, let's check a few examples because remember, in all the tenses, it's very important that you learn these three structures: the affirmative, the negative, and the interrogative form, okay? Because those are the three structures that you will use most of the time. So for the affirmative structure, she has visited the museum. And in this particular example, I'm going to take the opportunity to explain something to you. The verbs in English ending in T or D, whenever we put them in the past tense or in the past participle, which means that we add ed to the end of the verb, you hear the pronunciation ed at the end. So has visited. For all the other verbs, okay, that don't end in T or D, you only hear t, d at the end when we put them in the past tense or in the past participle. Listen to the other example. The man has watched a movie at home. Okay? If you notice, I'm not going to say watched. For my students who speak Spanish or French, they normally tend to say watched. Okay? No, it's watched. Okay? Visited, because the verb visit ends with T. Okay? So in that case, you can pronounce the ED like ed. Okay? Very good. So this is the structure for the affirmative. Number 3, the truck has carried the stones away. Someone has knocked on the door. The ship has sailed away. I have spoken to the teacher. They have written, an essay. They have written an essay, okay? So this is the affirmative structure. All you need is your subject. You need the verb to have. with the correct conjugation according to the subjects, and then the past participle of the verbs. That be regular when we add ed, or irregular when we check the list of the irregular verbs. Awesome. I'm trying to use the same sentences so you get the idea of how to use them in the three formats. So affirmative, negative, and interrogative. So we're going to use the same sentences now in the negative form, okay? She has not visited the museum, okay? We can choose to write it completely, has not, or we can write the contraction, which is hasn't, okay? Okay, so as I was mentioning that you can use the long form, which I recommend for my students when you're just starting out, okay, instead of the contraction. But you can choose to say she has not visited the museum, or you can say she hasn't visited the museum. The man has not watched a movie at home. Okay, so has plus not plus the verb in the past participle. The truck has not carried the stones away. Someone has not knocked on the door. The ship has not sailed away. I have not spoken to the teacher, okay? If it's has plus not, you can use a contraction, which is hasn't. If it's have plus not, you can say haven't. So I have not spoken to the teacher, or I haven't spoken to the teacher. They have not written an essay, okay? They haven't written an essay. Very good. So that's the second structure. So far we've seen the affirmative and we've seen the negative. Now let's look at the interrogative structure. And this is like the question structure when I say interrogative, okay? Because normally I say that and my students like, what is interrogative? Okay, questions. So how do we create the interrogative structure in the present perfect tense? Well, we have to start off with the verb to have in the correct conjugation, the subject, and then the verb in the past participle. So we're using the same sentences, okay, for comprehension's sake. Number one, has, we start off with have, okay, has, because it's she. So has she visited the museum? Has the man watched a movie at home? Has the truck carried the stones away? Has someone knocked on the door? Has the ship sailed away? Have I spoken to the teacher? Have they written an essay? Okay, and those are the three structures that we have to learn in English. Very good. Now, there are some keywords that help us to identify when we use the present perfect tense in English. Those words are for, since, already, and yet. What's the difference? We're going to use for when we're talking about the duration of something, so the time. I have lived here for 5 years, okay? For the time, okay? You have to put the duration of the time. So you can say like in months, in years, in hours, etc. Since is from a specific time. I have lived here since 2009, okay? When we use already, okay, this is only for affirmative sentences. So, and it means something that you did already. It's finished, okay? So I have already done my homework. Already we can use to put it in between the auxiliary verb to have and the past participle, or we can push it to the end of the sentence. So you can say, I have done my homework already, okay? So one more time. I have already done my homework. I have done my homework already. Yet. Yet is normally for negative and interrogative. So when you're asking a question and when you're answering in the negative form, you can use yet, okay? Let me just turn this over to see, okay? Yes, so I have not yet done my homework. I haven't done my homework yet. Okay, so those are the cases when we're going to use these words in the present perfect tense in English. There are two other words that we have to learn, which are ever and never. Ever we're going to use when we're asking a question, and never when we're answering in the negative form. For example, with ever, have you ever seen a whale? Have you ever seen a whale? So ever, okay, for questions. Now with never. I have never seen a whale. I have never seen a whale. And if you notice in this case, since I'm using never and it's already indicating negative, I cannot say I have not never, okay? You don't need to use not here, okay? You just say I have never seen a whale. Perfect, okay? That would be all for the present perfect tense in English. I hope it was clear and you understood everything and you're able to do the exercise, okay? So we will move on with the next part of the course in a moment.